we have a podcast.
Diving deep into all things Texans, both on and off the field. Here's Sean Pendergast and Pro Football Hall of Famer, the General, John McClain. Welcome to Houtopia.
Everybody, welcome in. It is the Houtopia Football Podcast. This is it. This is the preview edition for the Browns and the Texans on Saturday. Playoff football back in Houston for the first time in 4 years. We'll do some for real or fugazies, and we'll lead off by talking about the crazy coaching carousel, crazy 24 hours we just experienced with respect to coaching positions, both college and pro. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Sean Pendergast, one half of Payne and Pendergast, Sports Radio 610, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my friend, and our senior columnist at sportsradio610.com, John McClain. And John, we'll get into Bobby Slowick in just a second, Texans offensive coordinator, yet another team asking permission to speak to him. But have you ever seen anything like the 24-hour period, not even 24 hours, really more like 18-hour period from the time where Pete Carroll was removed from duty in Seattle, I'll call it, to just a couple hours later, Nick Saban stepping down, and then this morning, Bill Belichick and the Patriots announcing that they're parting ways. I would submit, John, that's 3 of the 4 or 5 best football coaches, period, over the last 10 to 12 years, all stepping down within 1 day of each other.
It's not just that period, going back to the start of the week when Jim Harbaugh won a national championship, all the reports that he's coming to the NFL where we go to work, and then guys like Mike Vrabel, that was a surprise, and then going up to Belichick, we knew that was coming, and we had no idea about Nick Saban resigning or Pete Carroll getting fired. There's always surprises, and there may be another one in store after these first round of games, but I've never seen anything like it in 47 years of covering the NFL and my 52 years as a sports writer, and I doubt we'll ever see anything like that again because Saban's the greatest college coach of all time. Belichick, although the post-Brady period has kind of tainted his image as the greatest pro coach of all time, but they still are incredible, and they're good friends, and they're walking away, at least from their current jobs. Saban's supposed to be going to ESPN. It's what everybody's saying, and eventually replace Lee Corso. And then, of course, Pete Carroll wants to coach another team, and we know Belichick, who's the same age as Pete, I think a few months younger. I think Washington would be perfect for him because he grew up in Annapolis. He loves the military. Just seems like a natural place, but it's just been mind-boggling.
Yeah. So, John, let's go through each of these real quick. Do you think Pete Carroll coaches again? Do you think he is a desired candidate around the NFL right now?
He says he wants to coach. You know, Pete, you look at him, you don't think of him being 72 years of age. He talked at his news conference about how good he feels. He said, you guys, me and the media, think I ought to be lying down somewhere, but I got a lot left in me. And watching him on the sideline and every day, you know, he's 72 going on 32. So I don't know if you're ever going to get a job, this is the year to do it because there's so many available. They're not all attractive, but I think Pete Carroll will get another job, and he'll get it from somebody like, say, Mark Davis if he doesn't stick with Antonio Pierce. I don't see him sitting out because then he'll be 73 years old, but I think he will work again.
Yeah, no, I know he wants to coach. Yeah, that was my question. Like, how desirable a candidate is like now Pete Carroll's name is going to be on all these lists that we see. You know, that have Bobby Slowick's name and Ben Johnson's name and Brian Johnson's name and all these coordinators and Jim Harbaugh's name and Bill Belichick's name. Do you think Carroll on those lists will be considered a top candidate for this job cycle?
I think he'll be a candidate, and I think he'll get one. Not many coaches can say they've won a national championship in college and a Super Bowl. And I think if somebody interviews Pete and sees the energy that he has, and he's always been that way, going back to when he was the head coach of the Patriots and the Jets, he was a very energetic guy. And so I think a guy with that track record who's done a good job with the Seahawks the last 2 years, considering what he had at quarterback, I think he'll get a job.
Belichick, Do you think he coaches next year?
Absolutely. He's told people he wants to coach. He's real tight with Adam Schefter. Anything Adam Schefter says is gospel when it comes to Belichick.
Okay, so there's 8 openings right now, John. Carolina, the Chargers, Vegas, Atlanta, Washington, Tennessee, Seattle, and then New England, where Belichick's leaving. Of the other 7 non-New England ones, which one do you think is the best fit? You just mentioned Washington you think is a great fit. Do you think that's where he ends up?
I think that would be a great fit. Mike Florio said there might be too many cooks in that kitchen, and there might be, but he would have all that worked out in his contract, and they'd get a quarterback. The problem with Atlanta is they got a lot of pieces in place. They don't have a quarterback, and he knows what it's like when you don't have a quarterback. His reputation is taking a beating, but Arthur Blank is a good owner to work for. He stays out of it, and I think Arthur Smith, a lot of the problems he was short-tempered with the media. Anytime you don't look good in news conferences because you're snappy and you're feisty, then the media, talk shows, columnists, everybody, online fans is going to blast you. And that's fine if you're winning, like Bill Belichick, but when you lose, it grates on an owner.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not good PR for sure. As far as Saban goes, John, I think he's probably done coaching, if I had to guess. And you mentioned I think he'd be perfect in the Lee Corso spot. I've always enjoyed Nick Saban every time he's been on TV. I enjoy Belichick when he goes on TV as well. There are 2 guys where you hear all the time about both of them is that their personalities are very different behind the scenes than they are at a podium or on the sideline. I think Saban would be great on ESPN. I guess the question is 2 questions. I'm going to let you debunk. I'm going to let you disappoint all the Alabama fans out there right now that are pining on the message boards to get DeMeco Ryans to be the head coach. 0% chance or -% chance that DeMeco Ryans is the head coach of Alabama next year?
I'm not going to say 0 because he loves Alabama. He's from Alabama. He talks about Alabama, but this was his dream job, not Alabama. And I think Alabama's going for a college coach. There's a lot of coaches. I saw a great thing online last night. It showed Dabo Swinney running along the sideline. Now, he was running during a game, but it said Swinney running to Tuscaloosa to try to get that job. And there's a big backlash from the fans. They don't want him. Dan Lanning would be perfect at Oregon. But, man, you know what they say, Sean, about replacing a legend? And Saban has been wise to go on ESPN, anything they've needed through the years, because he knows young people watch ESPN. And he's reaching out to recruits, just like he used to do a talk show here when he was at LSU in the morning with John Granado. Because he wanted to be able to the kids and their families hear him talking about LSU. So they think eventually, whenever that is, and they say Lee Corso stay as long as he wants, that he'll go on there. They'll find a role for him on game day, just make the table bigger, or maybe, Pat McAfee's not happy. He's already hinted about not being back on game day. But I think he will definitely have a place at the table on college game day.
Okay. So you think Lanning would be a good hire there?
Well, there's reports in Oregon, Eugene, by people who cover that team, and Tuscaloosa, that Lanning was already there. I don't know how he could get there that quick. I'll tell you a quick story. Ryan Fowler, who's been doing main talk show in Tuscaloosa for years, and I was doing his show yesterday. He always wants to keep up with the Alabama people that the Texans have. And I'm giving an answer, and then he didn't say anything, and I'm waiting for him to ask me another question. This was Wednesday afternoon, and I thought we'd lost the connection, and I was about to say, am I still on? And he goes, I'm sorry, John.
Gotta hang up.
I'm reading something. I want to make sure I read this and say it right. I'm sorry to butt in, but Nick Saban has just died. Resigned. And I said, thanks for having me on, Ryan. Go do your job, and hung up. And he got back to me late last night.
How did Nick Saban has just died pop into your brain right there? How did that?
Somebody's gone. I listened to ESPN all morning, talking to him in past tense, like they're talking about Belichick. He was this, he was that, like he died instead of he's going on. But when I was thinking about it, first thing I thought about when he's gone. But
he's gone.
Thank God he didn't say that, and I didn't either.
He's gone.
Fast as I've
John,
ever gotten off a talk show.
There you go. Yeah. John, just back to D'Amico for 1 second. This isn't just the D'Amico take. This is general. I can't imagine an NFL head coach, especially a successful one, which D'Amico Ryans has been thus far, and I think will be for a long, long time, would ever want the headache in this day and age of being a college head coach compared to being an NFL head coach. I can't imagine. The NIL, you're basically, the college head coaches had a pretty good life. Now they've been asked to basically manage a salary cap and re-recruit their team every year. Like, have to put like 3 times the horsepower into recruiting than they used to, because it used to be like, recruit a kid, you get him in there, and now he's kind of shackled there because if he transfers, he's got to sit out a year. That transfer portal has completely changed the workload and the stress level on college coaches. Screw that. Let me stay in NFL where I can just coach my ball plays. You know what I mean? I can call up my defenses. Little Bobby over here, call up the offense, get CJ Stroud on our team, and win 10 to 14 games every year for the next decade.
And they say that that's the reason Saban has walked away. He got tired of dealing with all that. I read a couple of months ago he has 13 people in his transfer portal department. And something that you can't have an agent when you're in college. Who's negotiating all these deals? Their parents? Well, we know that's not the case. Do they have agents illegally? Of course they do. And so every year players come back wanting more money, and it's a bunch of them. And just like you win the Super Bowl, you win a national championship. Can you imagine a lot of those Michigan players being recruited by other schools, or they want the Wolverines to give them more money? That's another reason I think Harbaugh's coming to the NFL.
Yep, I agree. It's such a better gig. It's such a better gig. And it probably pays better, too, for the upper echelon. I know the college coaches are making more now than they ever have, but what a headache that is. All right, John, you ready to do our – and Bobby Slowick getting requested by the Titans. Before we – don't change the graphic yet, James. Bobby Slowick requested by the Titans. I know you're a line that, regardless of these 8 jobs that are out there right now, that you think Slowick is coming back for another year. But how big a threat are the Titans, given that Rand Carthon, his former coworker in San Francisco, is the GM there?
I did 2 shows in Nashville the last 2 days, and they have Slowick, the media does, at the top of their list because he and Cawthorn worked 6 years together. Now, maybe they hate each other. We don't know. But I'm talking to Kyle Shanahan on Friday for a column about D'Amico and Slowick and how well they're doing. Plus, I want to talk to him about Andre Johnson. Why he thinks he's worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. But Bobby, there's a lot of openings, and he's been a play caller for 1 year, and he's had growing pains. And we've seen him have great games, mostly real good games, a couple bad games. But Carthon is, he's in charge now of that hire, and that's not an attractive job. What if Bobby Slowick didn't think Will Levis was worth the first or second round? They traded up to the top pick in the second round to get him. If you force feed a quarterback down a new coach's throat that he doesn't have highly rated, the guy's gone after a year and you're starting over. And Titans, while they still have good defensive players when they're healthy, their offensive line's terrible. They need receivers. If Derrick Henry leaves, they need a second running back. Thing is, he'd be starting at the bottom, working his way up. If I had to take a job, I would look toward Atlanta and think that with all these quarterbacks out there, that I could get one. And because you got a lot of other pieces in place, that would be a much better job. Amy Adams Strunk fired John Robinson in the late during the season, last season. And now she's fired Mike Vrabel, one of the best coaches in the league. So you'd have to wonder, well, who is making the calls up there? What happened behind the scenes? But Slowick, I think, will do like D'Amico, like Ben Johnson did with the Lions last year after he interviewed here, like Kevin O'Connell did with the Rams. They interview and they say, you know what? I need to go back and get another year of experience calling the shots, even though Sean McVay was calling the plays. And it worked out great for D'Amico and Kevin O'Connell. It's going to work out great for Ben Johnson, I'm guessing. But I'll be curious to know what Bobby Slowick's dad, who's a coordinator for 4 teams, what advice he gives him, because they're close.
That's a lot of bread, John. That's a big pay raise to go up to being a head coach. There's no guarantees down the road that you're going to get that opportunity. And it looks like you will to keep coaching CJ Stroud. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Are you ready to do a little preview of this Cleveland wild card game, John, with the Texans on Saturday? A little six-pack?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. John and I preview every Texans game, and this is obviously the biggest one to play game, an actual playoff game at NRG Stadium. 3:30 on Saturday, the Texans invitational spot, we call that, 3:30 on Saturday afternoon during wild card weekend. The Texans facing off against the Cleveland Browns, who they just faced off against 3 weeks ago and got destroyed 36-22 in a game that wasn't even that close. It wasn't as close as it was on the scoreboard. Now, of course, that was Case Keenum and Davis Mills. This will be C.J. Stroud under center for the Texans, so it should be a whole different complexion for this game than the one a few weeks ago. That said, the Browns are a 3-point favorite as of this podcast in this game. I think they were a 3.5-point favorite when they faced the Texans with Davis Mills and Case Keenum at quarterback a few weeks ago. So the overall opinion really hasn't changed much from going into that game 3 weeks ago versus this game now, as far as the odds makers are concerned. We do a six-pack, storylines, coaches, players, position groups, whatever, that are going to impact the outcome of this game, and then we'll give our predictions. John, you go first.
I'm going to start with the secondary in general, Derek Stingley Jr. in particular. Joe Flacco burned him big time, 365, I think it's 60-something, 84. I'm not sure. It was so many yards. It's the most he's thrown for. And Amari Cooper caught 11 for 265, 2 touchdowns. They have got to improve the big plays. Flacco had 6 completions of 20 or more yards, starting with that early 52-yarder to Cooper on the first play. I think that they will play better. I'm not sure about pressure on Flacco. They couldn't get pressure on him before, and Garon Christian was one of their offensive tackles. It was amazing, and he had too much time to throw. And then when they did get some pressure, he showed his mobility, which is not much, but he can still move. And so I think Stingley, whose rating against him was over 100, and for the year he's been fantastic, somewhere in the 50s. He gave up 1 touchdown, and he had 1 interception, but he needs to have a big game and lead that secondary to have a much better game than they had on Christmas Eve.
Yep, I agree with that one, John, for sure. Secondary's got to tighten things up. If Jalen Petrie doesn't feel motivated and bring his A game on Saturday, I don't know what to do, because that was Petrie's lowest moment as a pro in that game. He got benched in that game on in week 16. So I'm with you on that. My first one is going to be the non-Nico Collins wide receivers. We got news yesterday. Robert Woods was back at practice. That was great news. We'll see about Noah Brown today. I don't feel great about that. He's missed a few games, and I know the injury report lists back or something. Noah Brown's got multiple injuries going right now. He's banged up. If they got him back, that would be a godsend right now, that you could actually trot 3 veteran wide receivers out there when you're in 3 wide receiver formations and not go to that drastic drop-off where either Hutchinson or Mechie, basically 2 rookies. Mechie's basically a rookie, that one of them would need to be on the field. And I think Nico Collins, he ain't going for 9 catches, 195 against this team. These are big boy cornerbacks. The Browns got Grant Delpit back yesterday. Their safety out of LSU, who had been on injured reserve. So he's going to be back. So their secondary got another piece. Nico had 4 catches for 18 yards the last time these two teams played. A lot of that was probably who was delivering the football to him. But point being, the Colts did nothing to take away Nico Collins. I think Jim Schwartz will figure out a way to try to take away Nico Collins, and thus C.J. Stroud is going to have to get other guys involved. So the non-Nico wide receivers, to me, are a big key. They're going to need somebody to step up with 5 or 6 or 7 catches outside of just Nico Collins.
That's a great one, and I'm going to stay on defense because I'm guessing Jonathan Grenard's out again. Just hurts their pass rush big time. Will Anderson Jr. is not going to be 100% before next season. The only thing you can do for a high ankle sprain is a little rest and rehab. And so Derek Barnett, who in the last 4 games among edge rushers, according to Pro Football Focus, Derek Barnett has a rating of 90.7. That is second in the NFL behind Myles Garrett at 93.1. In those games, he's got 16 pressures. So Derek Barnett has been a godsend since he was signed after Philadelphia released him. And he's one of the many players playing for money, new contract somewhere, if not for here. And so I think the pass rush, I feel good about their interior pass rush. They got to get something from the edge because Anderson is so limited. And I think that Derek Barnett needs to keep playing like he's playing.
Yeah, he's been, I mean, that's been a great pickup for Nick Caserio and Miko Ryans. Derek Barnett off the waiver wire is a huge, huge W for this team. As long as we're talking interior, John, I'll flip it the other way for my next one. And what I'll call the law offices of Scruggs, Dieter, and Mason. They need to bring their A game on Saturday against the Browns. When the Texans have broken down in terms of protection, oftentimes this season, especially as the season's gone on, it's been in the interior. That's when CJ is Williams coming up the interior. When that Titans game looked like it was the first Titans game in Tennessee, looked like it was kind of circling the drain a little bit late in the game and in overtime. Why? Because Danico Autry blew up the game coming up in the interior. DeForest Buckner made some plays last week. Now that's excusable. They actually did a pretty good job against the Colts last week. That's what they need to do. It's not just Myles Garrett. That whole front for Cleveland is pretty talented. And I always feel like, the quarterbacks always say, the guys coming off the edge, especially the ones that are in your view, coming off, let's say, the right side for CJ Stroud, you can handle those. And on the blind side, you got Laramie Tunsil. He'll be okay over there. It's the pressure up the middle that doesn't allow you to step into your throws that really cause problems. So, to me, the interior, the three guys, left guard, center, right guard for the Texans on the interior are one to watch for me.
And keep in mind, defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, who's in his first year with the Browns, he wants another shot at being a head coach. To do that, you've got to win. And if you make a big splash when you're getting after the quarterback, it causes people to notice. So I think they're going to do everything they can to get after Stroud. And as Bobby Slowick said this week, they've got to get rid of the ball fast, and I think they will. Now, my next one is Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick and C.J. Stroud. Bobby has had 3 teams request interviews, maybe more, but can you imagine how many are going to reach out to him if they upset the Browns? They're already talking about in Baltimore, Flacco coming home to play in the divisional round. They're talking in Cleveland about Flacco going home for the divisional round. And if they were to pull off an upset of the Browns in this game and them go to Baltimore, that would only strengthen Bobby Slowick's credentials and might get him to get another $1 million or $2 million a year offer from one of those teams. So I think Bobby Slowick and getting Stroud to get rid of the ball fast is going to be paramount.
Yep, it's a big game for Slowick. Every game's a big game for Slowick at this point because they're all on big stages. I thought the Colts game on Saturday night when CJ wound up getting Offensive Player of the Week this week because of that performance, I thought Bobby called a masterful game. No, it also helps to have CJ Stroud throwing off his back foot to Nico Collins on 2nd and 14 and zipping his lasers to guys as he's getting drilled by defensive linemen. But I thought Bobby called a good game. My last one, John, isn't a person or a coach or anything like that. They just need to get off to a faster start. Too often this year, they've gotten off slow starts. And I'm not just saying against Cleveland in Week 16. There was a stretch of several games, ironically games that they were winning by and large, where they were giving up touchdowns on the first drive to the opposing team pretty frequently. I remember Cincinnati they did. Kyler Murray hit a big touchdown 3 plays into the game. There was a stretch where they were falling behind by double digits in games, and amazingly, they were coming back and winning a lot of them. Cleveland was not one of them. In that Cleveland game, they allowed the opening kickoff to go back to about the 40-yard line, and then the very first play from scrimmage was that one you mentioned, the deep shot to Amari Cooper. So, they basically get 90 yards on the first 2 plays, 40 in the return game and then 50 in the passing game. And honestly, I felt like, okay, well, this just is their day. Like this is how it's going to be. They can't afford to get off to a slow start against this team. I think there's going to be a lot of Cleveland people at the game too, is my guess. So Energy Stadium, it's a home game and so on and so forth. But I think the sense I get, Cleveland is traveling for this game just from talking to people. So they need to, it sounds weird, they need to make sure and take the opposing crowd out of the game at this game and not allow Cleveland fans to kind of take over NRG Stadium. That's just where we're at right now, John. You and I have talked about this. The complete replenishing of fans at NRG Stadium on a week-to-week basis is going to be a 1-year delay kind of thing. I feel really good that the crowds are going to be rocking next year and that opposing fans may not be able to take over the stadium as readily.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine why they wouldn't be rocking in this game because they can't sell this ticket before the season when the schedule comes out. And so it'll be
Yeah.
pathetic if they sell their tickets to Browns fans, but they can't help it. And I think this about this game, it wouldn't surprise me, and I'm guessing you feel the same way. I'm not going to
Mhm.
pick the Texans, but wouldn't be surprised at all if Stroud did not lead them to an upset, and those interceptions that Flacco throws finally come back to bite him in the butt.
Yeah.
And the Browns should win. Flacco's been a tremendous quarterback, but what we've seen Stroud do is just incredible. And he may have another one or two incredible games in him.
Well, John, prediction time. So no may have about it. Does he have a game like that in him? What's your prediction for this game?
I'm going with the Browns to win this game 24-20.
Okay, I got the Browns as well. I got the Browns 23-17 in this game. So I think the Browns are going to win as well. And John, as you know, the good news is I am always wrong lately on the Houston Texans. I think I've been wrong on my picks for literally like the last 6 weeks. So Texan fans getting ready to listen to this or listening to this podcast, getting ready to hit me on social media to be angry with me, just know that I have anointed the Texans onto the divisional round. Against who will be the big question. And that leads us, John, into for real or Fugazi, because I've got a lot of stuff in here about these games coming up on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We got a Monday night game in the wild card weekend as well. You ready to do some for real or Fugazis, John?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we do for real or Fugazi. I've got 7 of them today. I read a sentence to John. John assesses it. If he agrees with it and he thinks it's truthful, he says for real. If he listens to that sentence and he thinks it's stupid, silly, false, whatever, he says
Fugazi.
Fugazi. Yeah, I like it, John. You're bringing the heat today.
I've been watching
Fugazi.
The Sopranos. They've been rerunning every year on HBO.
Well, they were. It was the anniversary of the first episode yesterday. 25th anniversary of the first episode. Amy and I went out to Carrabba's and came home and watched The Sopranos. We did very Italian things yesterday. It was her birthday.
You didn't kill anybody, did you?
No. Well, John, not as far as you know. All right. So let's do these for real or Fugazis. A couple scheduling ones, John. I'm curious for your thoughts on this. The NFL just announced today the 4 of the home teams for international games. The Panthers are going to be hosting a game in Munich.
Ooh, that'll be exciting.
Then I know I said that to Seth. Like, we are exporting some of our worst exports to Germany. Panther football. It's one of the worst exports that we have in the entire country. Then there's 3 London games, 2 of which are the Vikings and the Jags. 2 opponents that the Texans have slated for road games on their schedule this year. John, for real or Fugazi, the Texans will play at least one, well, not at least, they will play one overseas game in 2024.
I think that's going to be for real. I think they're going to be a hot team when it comes to primetime games because of D'Amico and Stroud and the way everybody talks about the teams pointing up, and they're getting an ungodly amount of publicity across the board. I record every show I can. I've even recorded shows on a network I'd never paid any attention to see what they're saying about the Texans. And I think the NFL sees that, and I think they'll be a popular team. As we've talked about already, and I'm going to keep talking about it, I hope the NFL puts the Texans and the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium on Thanksgiving. I think that would be a great game, and I think the Texans will be going somewhere in Europe. And I feel sorry for those fans over there who will buy tickets to the Jaguars. What are they going to promote? Bryce Young played 16 games, only missed one.
Oh, you're saying for the Panthers? The Panthers.
Come see David Tepper, the NFL's most controversial owner, have a contest over there among the fans at the sports bars about throwing drinks on each other to see who can do the best imitation.
Yes, I love John.
What do they have to promote?
Nothing. Well, we'll see who the head coach is. Maybe.
Hey, that first round pick. Oops, no, never mind.
Yeah, they don't even have one of those. That's the first overall.
I mean, seriously, that game will sell out in like 2 minutes, and the fans won't have a clue what they're getting because they're the old Jaguar. They're the new Jags.
All right, John. The next one you kind of touched on there. The other schedule one I had. Texans will face Dallas on Thanksgiving Day at Jerry World.
Well, as much as I want it to be, really, I don't think they will, but I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say it's for real because it just seems like such a natural.
John, can you imagine a Texan schedule where they go from literally every game except the last one is a noon Sunday kick to a schedule where they're playing a Europe game, they're playing the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, assume that they're getting at least with the teams on their schedule this year or next year, they're getting at least 2 primetime games. I mean, they got Lamar Jackson on the schedule, they got Mahomes on the schedule. They've got John. I think I mentioned this
schedule.
Josh Allen on the schedule. They've got Miami on the schedule. Tua, Mike McDaniel versus DeMeco Ryans. They've got Detroit on the schedule. They might have Caleb Williams on the schedule. They have a game in Green Bay next year. I mean, it's a spicy schedule next year, man. I don't know what the record's going to be, but man, it's going to be a whole lot of fun leading up to going through training camp, speculating about this upcoming season. The Texans are going to be a hot dark horse Super Bowl pick for a lot of people. Without a lot of people who don't look at the schedule.
I think they'll get at least 3 primetime games.
Yeah.
And even this game, they get the worst slot for playoffs, the early Saturday game. But I'm glad because then we can watch all the Sunday games and the Monday night games.
Amen. I love it. And Stefanski said he liked it. Stefanski said in his press conference, he's like, I'm glad we played the first game. Get it done. Get it out of the way, and then we can sit back and watch. All right, John, let's get to some of the games this weekend in Real or Fugazi. John, Miami and Pittsburgh are both underdogs. Miami, the 6th seed in Kansas City, and then Pittsburgh's the biggest underdog of the weekend, a double-digit underdog to the Buffalo Bills. If one or both of them pull off an upset, the Texans will avoid the Baltimore Ravens in round 2. If they both pull off the upset, the Texans will have a home game. If they beat the Cleveland Browns this weekend, they'll have a home game in the divisional round. John, for Real or Fugazi, at least one of Miami or Pittsburgh pulls off the upset this weekend.
Fugazi, I don't think they are, not with Tua being winless when it's below 45, and they're talking about it being 0 in Kansas City. And the Steelers, I just don't see it without T.J. Watt providing that great pass rush.
I'm with you on both of those. I think both of those games could get ugly. Be great if one of them won, and then depending on which one won would dictate who your next opponent is. You might get Buffalo, you might get Miami. That'd be kind of cool.
I got one, John. I got one for you. For Real or Fugazi.
Yeah.
If the Buccaneers upset the Eagles, and the Eagles are going down the toilet fast, Nick Sirianni will be another surprise firing.
I'm gonna say Fugazi, but I'm like Fugazi, but I don't feel good about being as emphatic. Yeah, I don't feel good about being that emphatic about it, John. What do you think?
I can't imagine that Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman would fire him one season after they made the Super Bowl when they know Super Bowl losers don't go back to the Super Bowl, and they still got a lot of talent. That backfired, that defensive move. That turned out Matt Patricia been a disaster.
Promoting Patricia, yeah.
So I think they'll he'll keep his job and they'll make some moves among their coordinators.
I'm with you there. That's just tough for me to see. Along those lines, John, for Real or Fugazi, this is my very next one. A good job by you. Philadelphia is 60 minutes away from being done. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to lose to the Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. For Real or Fugazi?
Fugazi. I think they'll get it together just enough to win the game. Good chance Todd Bowles will be fired by the Buccaneers. He's been rumored to be on the way out, and then they won the division, the worst division in the NFL. And I think the Eagles will muster up enough, show enough pride to go to Tampa and win that game.
Okay. I mean, they're John, they've shown nothing in the last month that would indicate they're ready to go on the road and win a football game in the playoffs against a Tampa Bay team that's played pretty good football over the last month or so.
Can you imagine
that's a big
what
leap
it's
of faith.
Like in Philadelphia now with the fans, the media? Oh, it's got to be
brutal.
Terrible.
Brutal. All right, John, I've got 3 more. I've got one more playoff one and then 2 more after that. Mike McCarthy, simple one. I'm going to the same question you just asked me about Sirianni. If Mike McCarthy loses to the Packers, he will be a surprise firing come Monday. For Real or Fugazi?
Fugazi. He's the first coach in Cowboys history to win at least 12 games in his first 3 seasons. And Jerry Jones, a lot of people think he's been quick on the trigger with coaches, but he's not. He's kept them too long. So I don't think he's going to get rid of McCarthy. He may say, okay, I don't want you calling plays anymore, but the problem's not playing at home. They need to find a remedy for not playing so bad on the road. But no, I don't think McCarthy would be out. Mike Florio's trying to act like Bill Belichick would go there, and I'm thinking Bill going there with Jerry as the GM, and I just don't see it.
I was with some Dallas people last night, John, over at the Yellow Rose Distillery, and they were all in from Dallas. That's where the company's headquartered, up in Dallas. And so they were all in for a party, and I was talking, a lot of them were talking about the potential of Jim Harbaugh with the Cowboys. What do you think about a fit with Jim Harbaugh and Jerry Jones?
Oh, he'd be even worse. Jerry likes those
worse than Belichick, huh?
But Harbaugh's hard to deal with behind the scenes.
Yeah.
People of the 49ers tell horror stories about him near the end of his reign there. And I'd remind me of same stories about Bill O'Brien, what it was like in the office for everybody. And I think him and Jerry don't mix. I think if Jerry backed away, and maybe at this point in his career, Belichick doesn't have to have control of personnel. Jerry Jones relies heavily on Will McClay, and he pays him a fortune to keep him from leaving for a general manager's job. So he's the reason they have as much talent as they do, and Jerry kind of signs off on it while he gets all the credit and the head coach. But I would see Belichick going before Harbaugh.
All right, last one, John. Aaron Rodgers is gone from the Pat McAfee show, and this is what's best for everybody, for real or fugazi?
For real. I listened to that thing Tuesday for him going on and on. Like he sounds just like he's out there on another planet, like Uranus. Yeah. And I want to hear him talk about football. I want to hear him talk about the Jets, the other teams, the league. And he just went on and on, calling out a producer of ESPN. And it's not a good look for Pat McAfee's show and ratings. I don't care how much he gets the young viewers. Nobody could have liked that show except maybe some far right wingers, but that's it. I turned it off. I got tired of it. And then I watched the next day when Watt was on. He asked Watt a question. Watt goes, "You're not going to get me on the late night talk shows."
Yeah. No. JJ's safe. JJ's safe, upbeat, sportsy. That's what McAfee's looking for. That's the craziest thing to me. I think Pat McAfee's brilliant. I think he's a brilliant business person. I think he's a great personality. He's obviously very sought after and versatile. His thinking that Aaron Rodgers would fit in his world of positivity he was trying to create is one of the dumbest things that I think I can remember. Like, we're just trying to be positive out here. And you brought Aaron Rodgers in. You let a wolf in. The wolf ate all the food. Like, I didn't want anybody to come in and eat all the food. Why'd you let a wolf in the house? I don't know.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. Like, what do you expect, man? So anyway, but problem fixed, I suppose, if you think it's a problem. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't think it was a problem. It was very polarizing,
The thing about Rodgers, when he was with the Packers and there was so much speculation on his job every week, it was good to have him on there because it helped McAfee get an initial boost in ratings because of Rodgers, but he doesn't need him anymore. And can you imagine, Sean, if next season at 40, Aaron Rodgers isn't what he was at 38 and 37?
Right.
When they let him control the team, then they got to go get another quarterback. Sets the franchise back even more.
I'd bet on that before I bet on him coming and having them in Super Bowl contention next year. 40-year-old coming off of an Achilles with a team that he's really not all that familiar with. Let's face it. I mean, it's not, like he had 4 snaps with them on the field last year. I know he's training camp and he's in building and blah, blah, blah. Like, no chemistry build. Are they bringing back all of his buddies again this year? Are Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard going to be 2 of the wide receivers again next year? That's Nathaniel Hackett's the OC. And they're in a division with Miami and Buffalo. That's. So I can't wait to play the Jets again next year. Now I hate that the Texans have to play them on that freaking concrete playground that is MetLife Stadium, but whatever, I guess. John, what do you got going on the website this weekend?
I've got a column on that the Texans would love for C.J. Stroud to play the way another rookie quarterback played in the playoffs in 2008. That would be Joe Flacco, who helped the Ravens go to the AFC Championship game where they lost at Pittsburgh. And in that year, Stroud was 7 years old. So I've got a column about the two of them. Texans talking about Flacco, Browns talking about Stroud, and then I've got a couple. We will have our third Houtopia football podcast. And Sean, thank you very much. We'll do this again after the game Saturday night, and I look forward to seeing you.
Can't wait. Hopefully it's a big win. Hopefully we get a dub. And to talk about that on Saturday night. And you guys will probably be listening to that podcast come Sunday morning. Of course, click that subscribe button so you get the podcast automatically wherever it is you listen to your podcast. We thank James Jackson, our producer, for getting the podcast out to you quickly and cleanly, and just does a great job making sure that you guys have Houtopia Football Podcast ready to go. HOU mailbag at gmail.com. That's how you can email the show. We do a mailbag episode. Our second episode each week is a mailbag episode, HOU mailbag at gmail.com. So for James and John, I'm Sean. We are out of time. We will talk to all of you at the end of the weekend after what is hopefully a victorious Texans wildcard game over the Cleveland Browns. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.